in the end.
Well, it's kind of surprising that Hydro Thunder got a sequel, huh? Well, how did we exactly get to this point? Especially given what happened with Midway and WB, the eventual buyer for most of Midway's IPs like Mortal Kombat, and their lack of interest in the Thunder IP. Well, it all started from another game seemingly unrelated to Hydro Thunder. However, Midway did want to make a sequel to Hydro Thunder due to its success, but that never materialized. Instead, we got spin-offs in the series. Off-Road Thunder, Four Wheel Thunder, which started off as a non-Thunder game, and Arctic Thunder. While Midway did put some of their arcade-first franchises on consoles like NFL Blitz, many of them didn't survive after Midway shuttered their arcade division, and the Thunder series, like Cruisin', was one such victim, leaving it to sit on a shelf until Midway's bad financial decisions caught up to them. Midway filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2009, and they closed their doors in 2010. But there's one gap that happened in between Midway closing their arcade division and their bankruptcy. You might not believe it, but it actually came from Microsoft's side. Cue the blink sound once more with feeling. You may remember a little game from the Xbox launch lineup called Bloodwake. This was a mission-based, story-driven boat combat game that's sort of like the water equivalent to Roadkill, which itself was like a mix of Twisted Metal Black and GTA. Also, Bloodwake came first, so just think part Twisted Metal, part GTA, all boat-driven, and you get the idea. Bloodwake was a decent success, selling enough to at least reach platinum hits. And two of the people who worked on the game eventually left Stormfront Studios, Bloodwake's developer, to form Vector Unit in 2007. The company only had 2 employees and 5 contractors. So, taking what they learned from Bloodwake, Vector Unit made an original speedboat racing game known as Barracuda. This game had boat driving like Bloodwake, but it also had realistic physics in addition to being beginner-friendly. Speedboats plus Supercross in a flooded Earth, that was the game. The prototype was then pitched to several publishers, and Microsoft Studios was one of those 3 interested. One producer in particular mentioned how it only took a few tweaks to make Barracuda a Hydro Thunder sequel. At first, the team didn't think that, but the more they thought about it, the more they realized how true this actually was. This decision was actually made once Microsoft acquired the rights to the Hydro Thunder name, or at least the rights to license the Hydro Thunder name. Now, Vector Unit actually had the game's original source code, the original game that is, and they even considered porting it, just straight up. But they realized it would need a remaster, so they just used their prototype as a basis and made a new game from the ground up. They still used the original game's source code when building the sequel, and they replayed the original quite a bit to get the feeling just right. Everything took cues from the original game, but it was updated for modern technological standards, with regards to physics and graphics. They had even considered expanding the game to include boat customization and custom tracks, but they ultimately decided to stick to the basics. It wasn't broke, so they didn't fix it. With a team consisting of 7 people, 2 programmers, 4 artists, and 1 sound designer, and in about 14 months, Hydro Thunder Hurricane was born. The game was revealed at PAX East in March of 2010, and it was one of the mystery games for Screw Attack's Iron Man of Gaming. Hydro Thunder Hurricane was released on July 28, 2010, worldwide exclusively on the Xbox 360 via Xbox Live Arcade. A Windows Store port was released on November 5, 2012. There was even a premium theme for the new Xbox Experience dashboard released on July 15, 2010. While Hydro Thunder Hurricane doesn't reinvent the wheel like its predecessor did, it's still a very satisfying racing game that will please fans of the original and newcomers to the series. Hydro Thunder Hurricane single player actually has more depth to it than the original game. There are 4 different types of gameplay modes within the single player. You have your standard race mode, which pretty much functions the same as the races in the original game. There are three new types of gameplay modes here. You have Ringmaster, which is where you try to navigate a set of rings throughout the course. As you hit these rings, you'll gain boosts. Try to make the end of the course without missing a single ring. You'll lose your boost a la Wave Race 64 / every other jet ski game like it if you miss one ring. You'll keep a constant boost stream going throughout. There are actually 3 levels: Novice, Pro, and Expert. Not only does the difficulty affect the ring placement and medal times, it also affects the credits you can earn and how much of them you can earn. More on that last part later. There's also Gauntlet mode, which only has you, the course, and a bunch of explosive barrels littered throughout. Make it to the end of the course as fast as you can, and try not to hit the barrels. They'll only slow you down. The last major single-player mode is Championship mode. This will mix up some of the events, and you'll have to try to win all of them. This is unique compared to normal tournament modes, since the different types in one championship will keep old and new players on their toes throughout. Types of races, that is. And as you complete these events, you can earn credits. The more credits you earn, the further you progress. Earn enough credits to unlock all 8 tracks and the remaining boats. In general, there's more variety here. Multiplayer is also available for local and Xbox Live. You can actually use a mix of split screen and take your guests who are playing locally online with you. There's an exclusive mode here called Rubber Ducky. This is where one team has to get their duck across the finish line first while keeping the other team's duck at bay. It's sort of like a protect your own sort of ordeal. Protect your own object, part capture the flag. It's a very interesting mode. The racing itself isn't very much different from the original game, but that's not a bad thing. You'll still work your way from point A to B for the majority of tracks, sans the few circuit tracks here, collecting boost power-ups 2 times and 4 times for offline racing, but online racing can go from 1 to 8 times boost depending on the position you are in. Boost jumping to find hidden spots that would normally be inaccessible without boost jumping, and generally trying to come in first when racing. One new thing that they've added here are the addition of these gear power-ups. When they hit, they can activate ramps that can lead to other shortcuts. These add an additional thing to be mind of when racing, and they can lead to some variety in the routes thanks to new areas to access. The other new thing added here is the addition of packages. In addition to earning credits to unlock skins, some skins can be unlocked by finding hidden packages consisting of the game's logo, scattered throughout the course. These will really get you to explore the out-of-bounds areas. There are no time limits anymore, even though there are still checkpoint buoys. On the whole, if you've played the original, you'll feel right at home here, and new players will adapt very quickly. There's not much more I can say here that I didn't already say in the review of the previous game. Once again, controls are at the forefront for this game. They are pretty much the same as they were in the last game, down to the inputs themselves. I'm playing the PC version in this footage, but I'm using an Xbox controller. You can also use a keyboard for the PC version, but I do prefer a controller for this, seeing as how I've always played this with a controller since I first played it on the 360. It feels very much like it did on the 360. Interesting thing to note, if the default button mapping isn't to your liking, you can change any button to act like something else. Everything is responsive, inputs work as they should, turning sensitivity feels right, and the controls are pretty good like the last game, though once again, the handling of the boats themselves will come down to the difficulty of the boat you select. That also hasn't changed. What has changed though is how you handle boost jump. Jump is now mapped to its own input. You still need boost, but you no longer have to take your hand off the accelerate button. Push a button when you have boost and it works. Mighty holes also aren't much of a thing anymore, but that probably has more to do with the physics. Still, the controls are on point, and old players will pick it back up in no time. New players will just get used to it since they are good on their own merits. The graphics have undergone a serious improvement over the original. Going from mostly 5th, but part 6th generation, there definitely was expected to be some kind of jump. I don't think anyone expected this much of a jump, especially for a game that is a downloadable only game. Where do we begin? Well, the boat models definitely look much better. Each of them are more detailed with more polygons, smoother looking textures, and there's more variety in how they can look thanks to the unlockable skins. It's better than having to pick a different boat just because someone else called dibs on it in the previous game. The designs do have some subtle differences in minor details compared to their original counterparts, but they still have the same familiarity to anyone who's ever played the first. Track familiarity will only come down to the first track, Lake Powell. That's the only returning track. Even then, it's undergone a bit of a rehaul. Rather than spending most of your time in canyons, you'll split in between the canyons, but you actually get to race inside of a dam. The race ends very differently with you jumping out of the power side of the dam, or whatever you call it. Many of the other tracks have much of the same things going on that went on in the last game. Police boats and other boats chasing you when applicable, environmental aspects going on. For the latter, you can actually see pieces of rocks, ice, and other environmental parts falling apart when something happens. This can actually affect the waves, which lets the water look more varied than in the original game. And it can even sometimes cause your boat to get a little bit of extra airtime when you don't expect it. Many of the courses invoke the spirits of the original ones, but they have their own flair. Take Tsunami Bowl. This course is like a mix between Thunder Park and Hydro Speedway. It has the more expansive and complex nature of Speedway, but the daytime ordeal of Thunder Park. Monster Island invokes Lost Island and has much of the same, though more variety in the caves and temples and stuff like that. It also has a different route each lap with some surprises per lap. Paris Sewers takes a more underground spin of something like Venice Canals, but it obviously has more French architecture. Seal Stream takes place at night in South Korea and takes things back to the surface. It also has a tighter amount of turns and the like. So while some courses feel similar, some feel very fresh, like Storming Asgard. You're in Scandinavia and you start in a harbor town in the middle of a storm while dodging falling glaciers. You're mostly racing in a cave for the good middle of it, but towards the end you enter some place based off Viking history while fending off an attack from a godlike being and cut through another cave before ending up at a Northern Lights finishing line. Lost Babylon starts off in an ancient-looking city, but then it has you go through several forgotten temples and other buildings, some of which are littered with weeds. Then one last cave, and you finish at an island. Oh, and Area 51? It's everything you ever dreamed it could be. This is what Rad Hazard was made for. On the whole, the course design is just as good as the first game, if not better due to the more ambitious routes and unique spins from old favorites. They are modeled well, they have plenty of environmental variety, and it just looks more like an improved version of the original game. The sound design here is also pretty good. The music, while good, isn't quite as epic or memorable as the original game's soundtrack. Instead of the grand adventure/danger feeling of the previous game, we get a more serviceable techno-rock soundtrack. This doesn't necessarily sound bad on its own, but it does blend in more and doesn't stand out as much as the original game's soundtrack as a result. It's so bare minimum serviceable that I'm not sure I can describe it further without putting someone to sleep. At least the sound effects still stand out. Everything from the original that can be improved was. Splashdown sounds, hitting sounds, boost sounds, okay, maybe not so much there, but still. Environmental/ambient sounds for all the tracks, with much variety depending on what track you're racing on, etc. All the menu sounds are good, but again, I do prefer the ones from the original game. Maybe it's the nostalgia talking. The voice acting consists of much of the same type of things seen in the previous game. Other voices for things like police boats and other boats that come up to you as you race, the announcer, and your captain speaking to you. That last one almost sounds like the same guy from the previous game, but I have no way to verify it at this moment. Regardless of if he is or isn't, he still sounds fine, as does everyone else. With the hidden packages giving incentive to replay tracks to unlock additional boat skins, combined with the credit system for natural progression, this game actually has more replayability in it than the original game. Furthermore, if you get the Tempest pack, you can get 3 additional tracks, 2 new boats, and expert versions of the Novice and Pro boats. This pack is included in the PC version for free, but it's at the cost of no multiplayer mode whatsoever. It sucks, but it is what it is. Still, there is plenty to keep you coming back. Hydro Thunder Hurricane is a pretty solid follow-up to a cool arcade racing game. It looks better than the original, has good sound design across the board in regards to sound effects and voice acting, refines things a bit to keep old players on their feet by including new modes. The multiplayer is fun, it controls well, and the replayability is better than the original thanks to the hidden packages and credits. However, the music isn't as good as the original, the multiplayer is missing on the PC version, and the game doesn't quite reinvent the wheel like its predecessor. Still, this is a solid boat racing game that I can easily recommend, both to original fans and those who didn't play the first game. I remember getting hyped about this when it came out, being a huge fan of the original. It further cemented my decision about getting a 360 in 2010. However, you can no longer buy the game on the 360 due to the marketplace shutdown. You can buy this for Xbox One and on since it's on the backwards compatibility list, and you can buy it for PC on Microsoft Store for Windows 8 and on. I do wish this and other Microsoft PC games would find their way to Steam at some point. If it doesn't, I guess it is what it is, but come on, Microsoft, you're leaving money on the table. Still, play this in some way, shape, or form if you haven't. I give Hydro Thunder Hurricane a 4 out of 5. Thanks for watching. Click subscribe below and check out the playlist on screen for more content. To help support the show beyond the usual means, check out my Patreon and Ko-fi on the link tree in the description. And come by my Twitch where I conquer my backlog one game at a time. See you in the next video.